Hello, neighbor. I'm so glad you're here again in this quiet space of ours. I am sitting here with something very old, something that perhaps not many people use anymore. It is a paper road map, a map of the state of Pennsylvania. I found it while cleaning out an old drawer. It has been folded up for many years. And now, as I open it, the creases are still set deep in the paper. The paper itself has yellowed a bit. The ink in a few places has faded. I am tracing my finger along one of the roads, drawn in a red line, a road that I once traveled a very long time ago. The road begins in Philadelphia, winds through the peaceful farmlands of Lancaster, then heads west over the Allegheny Mountains, and finally comes to its destination in Pittsburgh. I remember that trip. I remember the feeling of anticipation at the beginning. I remember the small towns I passed through, and I remember the feeling of having arrived, a feeling of completion. The journey was over. The road on this map for that particular trip had come to its end. And tracing this road that came to its end makes me think about the endings in our own lives and about a very important idea. Often when you think you're at the end of something, you're at the beginning of something else. The end. It is a phrase that sounds so final, so definite. When we think of endings, we often feel a sense of loss, the end of a school year, the end of a job, the end of a relationship, the end of a chapter in our lives. These endings often bring with them a sadness, a nostalgia for what has passed, and sometimes a fear of what comes next. When a familiar road comes to an end, we can find ourselves standing before an open, unmapped territory, and that can feel very frightening. But that saying invites us to look at endings in a different way. It doesn't deny the sadness or the loss, but it gently suggests that perhaps an ending is not a solid wall. Perhaps it is a doorway. Today, maybe we can very slowly think about that together. When a role comes to an end in our lives, we play so many roles. The role of a child, a student, an employee, a parent. These roles give us a structure, a purpose. They tell us who we are and what we need to do each day. And then, one day, our role ends. I think of a man named Mr. Lancaster, who lived in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood of Pittsburgh for 40 years. Mr. Lancaster was a mail carrier. That role was his life. What he had was a familiar route, a heavy leather bag on his shoulder, and hundreds of faces he greeted each day. He knew which houses had a barking dog. He knew which families had just welcomed a new baby. He knew when Mrs. Rossi on the corner would be baking cookies and would always save one for him. His job was more than just delivering mail. He was a part of the fabric of the neighborhood. And then the day came. He retired. It was an ending. The farewell party was lovely. People gave him gifts and thanked him. But the next morning, for the first time in 40 years, Mr. Lancaster woke up and did not have his uniform to put on. He had no mailbag to carry. He had no route to walk. The feeling was one of emptiness. He told me that for the first few weeks, he felt invisible. He was at the end of something very big. He thought the most important part of his life was over, but then something new began, something very small, because he no longer had to rush to follow his route. He began to walk through his neighborhood more slowly. He no longer looked at the houses as mail slots. He began to notice the gardens. He saw that Mrs. Rossi's garden had many beautiful roses, but also many weeds. One morning, he put on his old gardening gloves, walked over to Mrs. Rossi's house, knocked on the door, and said, "Hello, Mrs. Rossi. I have a lot of time on my hands now. Would you like some help with those weeds?" That was a beginning. Mr. Alistair started helping Mrs. Rossi in her garden, and then he helped the family next door to mend their fence. He realized that what he had was more than just his job as a mail carrier. He had capable hands, he had time, and most importantly, he had a deep knowledge of the people in his neighborhood. Gradually, he became the neighbor people turned to when they needed a hand. He was no longer Mr. Alistair the mail carrier. He was simply Mr. Alistair. His role was no longer defined by a job. It was defined by who he was as a person. The end of his career was not the end of his worth. It was the beginning of a deeper, more personal way of connecting with the community he loved. The old map with his mail route was folded up, and he began to draw a new one, a map of relationships and helpfulness. When a place comes to an end, we become attached to places, the house where we grew up, the city where we went to college, the first apartment we rented on our own. These places are more than just physical locations. They hold our memories, our feelings, parts of our life story. And when we have to leave such a place, it is an ending. I think of a young family, the Millers, whom I once knew. They lived in a small house in a town near Harrisburg. It was their first home. What they had there was a little backyard where they had planted an apple tree together. It was the kind neighbor who would often bring over cookies. It was the familiar street where their daughter learned to ride her first bicycle. But then, because of a job, they had to move to a big, unfamiliar city. The day they moved was a sad one. They looked back at the empty house, at the young apple tree, and felt like they were leaving a part of themselves behind. They were at the end of a happy chapter, and ahead of them was an uncertain beginning. The first few months in the new city were difficult. Everything was strange. The streets, the sounds, the faces. They missed their old house. They missed the feeling of belonging. They felt lost. The new beginning did not come quickly or easily. It came through small, conscious actions. They decided to do something with this strangeness. Instead of just staying in their apartment, every weekend, they would explore one small corner of the city together. They would walk in a new park. They would try a small restaurant in a different neighborhood. They went to the public library. Slowly, the strange streets began to feel familiar. They found a bakery that smelled like the one back home. Their daughter made a friend at the playground. They began to exchange greetings with the vendor at the local market. They realized something important. Home is not just four brick walls. Home is the feeling of safety and connection that they create together. The old house had ended, but their ability to create a home had not. The end of the old place was not the end of their happiness. It was the beginning of a new adventure. It was the beginning of discovering their own family's strength and resilience. It was the beginning of understanding that they could carry home with them wherever they went. The old map had ended, and they were drawing a new one together, full of unexplored streets and places. When a dream comes to an end, this is perhaps one of the most difficult and painful endings. We live with our dreams, our hopes for the future. They are the stars we navigate by, and when a dream does not come true, when the path we thought we were on suddenly disappears, it is a painful ending. I think of a woman named Eleanor. She had spent her entire young life pursuing one dream: to become a professional concert violinist. She had practiced for thousands of hours. She had studied at a prestigious music school in New York. The path seemed so clearly laid out, but then an injury to her hand put an end to it all. The doctors told her she would never be able to play at a professional level again. Her dream had ended abruptly and cruelly. For a long time, she was lost in despair. The violin, once her greatest source of joy, was now a painful reminder of what she had lost. She put it away in its case and did not touch it. She felt that she, herself, had ended. Along with her dream, her new beginning was not a grand event. It was a very slow, very quiet process. One day, her young niece came to visit and asked, with great curiosity, about the dusty violin case in the corner of the room. With a heavy heart, Eleanor opened it. The little girl looked at the violin with awe. "Can you play it for me?" Eleanor was about to say no, but then she looked at the child's clear, expectant eyes. And she tried. She picked up the violin. Her fingers were still stiff, but she played a simple tune, a lullaby her own mother had sung to her. The sound was not as perfect as it once was, but it was full of feeling, and when she saw the joy and wonder on her niece's face, something inside of her shifted. She realized that the end of her dream of being a performing artist did not have to be the end of her love for music. That was a beginning. Eleanor began to teach the violin to the children in her neighborhood. She started a small class right in her living room. She wasn't teaching them to become great virtuosos. She was teaching them to love music, to find the joy in making a sound. She discovered a new kind of joy, the joy of sharing, the joy of seeing the light in a child's eye when they finally play a difficult note correctly. She realized that her love for music had not died. It had simply found a new way to express itself, a way that was perhaps even deeper and more meaningful. The end of her old path was not a dead end. It was a turn leading her to a new path she had never considered, a path of giving. New beginnings often don't look the way we expect them to. They often don't arrive with trumpets and fireworks. They often start very, very quietly. They start in the empty space that an ending has left behind. When the noise of a familiar life quiets down, we have the space to hear new whispers. They start with a small action, an offer of help, a decision to explore a new street, picking up a violin again. And what is so important to remember is this: the new beginning does not erase the sadness of the old ending. That sadness is real, and it deserves to be honored. Mr. Allister can still miss his job. The Miller family can still miss their old house. Eleanor can still feel a pang of regret for her performing career. Sadness and hope can exist at the same time. They are not mutually exclusive. In fact, it is often in the fertile soil of loss and sadness that the seeds of a new beginning can best take root. I look back at this road map. The end of the red line at Pittsburgh is not the edge of the world. It is only the end of that trip. From that point, countless other roads branch out. Smaller roads, not colored in red, that lead to towns and neighborhoods and parks I have never been to. The end of one road is just the beginning of countless others. So, my friend, if you are at a place in your life where it feels like you are at an end, please allow yourself to feel all that you are feeling. The sadness, the loss, the fear, those feelings are an important part of the journey. And then, when you feel you are ready, try to look around. Gently, there may be a new beginning waiting for you right there. It may not be a grand highway. It may just be a small footpath, a small act of kindness, a new curiosity, a different way of connecting. Life is not a straight line drawn on a map. It is more like a walk in the woods. Sometimes we follow a clear path, and sometimes the path disappears. And we must find our own way, one step at a time, not knowing for sure what lies ahead. And it is often in those moments, the unmapped moments, that we discover the most wonderful things about the world and about ourselves. You've made this day a special day just by being you, wherever you are on your journey. Thank you for being here. My neighbor,